So we are about a week removed now from one of the biggest storms that's hit the Central Florida area in a really, really long time. Obviously, depending on where you lived, where you were, you probably saw different parts of the storm. But regardless, we took a tremendous amount of damage. And so I was driving around the other day, late last week. It's chaos. There's no gas. All the street lights are down or literally hanging there. There was one traffic light that was like 4 feet above the street in the middle of the crossway there. And I'm driving to my rentals. I'm dealing with, had a couple rentals that flooded, another rental that had a large tree basically smashed the roof up. So I got to figure that out. But it got me to thinking, I'm driving around. This big storm really impacted my life in a fairly sizable way. And I started thinking to myself, maybe I should diversify a little bit. So David and I were talking, and we figured it'd be a good topic to discuss today, which was, yeah, we love real estate. We buy into it. We live it. We breathe it. We dream about it at night. But we want to make sure that at the same time, we're diversified so that we don't have all our eggs in one basket, okay? Now, I know a lot of people, like if you talk to someone, let's say we talked about LeBron James, right? If LeBron James was playing baseball and football and basketball, and he didn't put his main focus on basketball, would he be as successful as he is as the best player in the world right now, right? And so you have to balance that in terms of going all in, going deep, looking at one thing, being the best, that one thing, as Gary Keller says. But you have to balance that too with making sure that you don't have all your eggs in one basket. And I think as an entrepreneur, that is the test, that is the challenge that we face. So we're going to talk about that today and talk a little bit about diversification and kind of how the storm has reshaped a little bit about how we look at things. So with further ado, let's get right to it, everyone. All right, welcome everybody to your latest episode of Burn Your Boats. I'm Clark. I'm here with my co-host David. David, we have we're a week or so postpartum from Hurricane Milton, and so we decided to hop on here and talk a little bit about something that came up, David. And the reason why it kind of popped up is, I know both of us were running around. You spent all last weekend you're like the tree master now, right? Like you probably have like
Lumberjack Dave. That's me.
Lumberjack Dave. You don't have the flannel. We identified that on Monday that you don't have like some burly looking flannel jacket thing that you see people wearing in the Midwest. So we'll have to work on that.
I'll tell you what I do look like, though. After been dragging trees around for a week, I look like that fighting Australian kangaroo with all the muscles. That's one thing. One thing that's good for you is cutting up trees and dragging logs around the neighborhood. Let me tell you,
that's going to be the latest craze. Like the next CrossFit, right? Is like the lumberjack guy that's like going through with the chainsaw. But I was running around fixing stuff. I had some repairs that I need to do on some of my rental properties. I was running around with half a gas tank, watching every drip out of that gas tank, making sure that we were going to be able to make it to the next thing. But it got us thinking, right? It got us thinking about diversification. Okay, and people talk about it a lot, but at the end of the day, do you have all your eggs in one basket? Do you want to be able to diversify a little bit in terms of, I realize, David, that we kind of put a lot on real estate because we're both real estate guys, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't diversify into certain areas, right? So it got us thinking, David, in terms of diversification, what else can we diversify in? What are some things that we're doing? And so we're just going to talk about that briefly here today and keep it fairly short. So David, talk to us a little bit about that kind of topic and where you've kind of started to point the fire hose that's not just strictly into real estate.
Well, you know what, Clark? Last week, as we have a storm coming our way and it's doing this and doing that, I considered myself a calm beacon in the storm. Everyone else was sending me condolences,
Right.
best wishes, and I a lot of prayers said for me apparently last week as well. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there, in a kind of Buddha stance, knowing what I know about what a storm is, and what it can do and what it most likely will or won't do. But the bottom line is we can only fix and we can only attend to the things that are in front of us.
Right.
So, like previous storms before, I said, I will deal with what I have to deal with when I know what the thing that I have to deal with is. Do I have a broken window over here? Do I have a roof to replace? Do I have a this? Do I have a that? But prior to me knowing that information, I'm not going to, doom watch the news.
Right.
And so it's surprising, ironically, how many people around the world, I'm Irish, and even my Irish friends were deeply concerned. And
Everybody.
I'm sitting there, like Yoda, and, making, making videos and continuing on with my work week. And I didn't miss a beat. But it did get us to thinking about, the, certainly the media after shocks. You've got everybody who's got a drone is out there droning up and down the beach and telling us how, we live in Florida. If you don't know, we live in Florida, but Florida doesn't represent who we are. But we love it here. And we've done 2 episodes on storms, so we're not going to labor on that point anymore. But it definitely got us to talking about diversification. And one of the reasons why I maintained that calm approach is that I am very well diversified. This is a Burn Your Boats Wealth podcast. And so, in order to create meaningful wealth, one needs to have access to liquidity, one needs to have access to growth, one needs to have access to income, and then equally, you need to have access to debt, leverage, inflation hedges. So, it's a complex mix of what makes a well-rounded investment portfolio. Now, for a lot of us in real estate, and we are first and foremost real estate people, it's where any capital that we do have was made in real estate. But it's funny, Clark, as real estate investors, um, as real estate investors mature and evolve, they get very diversified. And equally, as business owners evolve, they get diversified into real estate and outside of their own businesses. And one thing that always surprised me was how many, New York finance managers and financial professionals we've done business with over the years who are diversifying out of financial instruments into real estate. And so we're all like cross collateralizing, if
Yeah.
you will, into each other's buckets, right? And my bucket is quite diversified, and I think that that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about, you're younger than I am, so we're going to talk about what your stance is versus my stance. So I think it's an interesting time to talk about diversification, Clark.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, and I'll kind of start off, kind of give you the context, because a lot of you listening are probably close to my age. Maybe I'm 41, and I've been buying real estate since I've walked out of Stillwater, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State University, and bought a house 6 months later. So I've kind of always lived and breathed real estate, and I am not as financially diversified as you are. I own some Apple stock, and I own some random stocks that I bought a long time ago. I've got some whole life insurance that I pay into, for which I have enjoyed, because I've used that to borrow against to be able to put down payments on 2 different new construction properties in the last 12 months. But other than that, I don't really play much in the stock market. I don't understand it. I don't understand crypto. I don't understand Bitcoin whatsoever. I've kind of stayed in my lane, which has probably limited me a little bit. And I've kind of gone deeper on real estate. At the same time, when you do that, I've got some damage from the storm. I've got 4 or 5 houses that trees down or fences, nothing catastrophic, nothing that I'm not going to bounce back from, but it is a mosquito bite that is itching right now, and it needs a Band-Aid, right? So we talk about cash flow, right? You hear cash flow in terms of rentals. My cash flow is gone for the next day, month, probably for the next 12 months. There's not going to be much cash flow. I'm just going to be paying back tree guys, fence guys, roof guys, things like that. But that's okay. And I already kind of knew that going in, and you was just kind of waiting for that, because I knew that the real estate rentals are a wealth builder. They're not necessarily going to, change my life in any way in terms of active income. So that is kind of just briefly where I'm parked. I haven't diversified as much, and probably a lot of people that are listening to this, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but I don't follow the NASDAQ. I just don't follow things like that much. Not because maybe it's because I'm not that interested in it, so I'm not passionate about it. So, but I am passionate about real estate, right? So I have kind of put most of my eggs in the real estate basket, but I am diversified over the state of Florida. So I have about half of my portfolio up in the panhandle of Florida. So when Hurricane, Helene or Milton was coming through, the panhandle was happy. They weren't getting touched, at least up in Pensacola and Destin, where I own my rentals up there. So in some ways, I am diversified in terms of where my rentals are, but at the same time, I'm not up there. I don't have good contractors up there. I just have property managers that I think are doing a good job. So it's something where I've continued to kind of go deeper into our backyard. That's cool. I like it, but I've got to thinking as I'm staring at a tree that's fallen through half of a roof on a rental property, it starts to, you get to the point where you question, maybe I should take a little bit of this portfolio and maybe drop it into something else that might not be real estate related, whatever that is. So, David, you've got 10 years on me. You've got more experience in this. Talk to me, the listener, the 41-year-old that's like, okay, I understand real estate and maybe one other thing. What have you done that's successfully been able to diversify your portfolio to where you're not kind of like a one-legged stool?
Well, to be honest with you, as a 41-year-old, you're probably pretty normal. Quite frankly, you get good at something, you start making money in it. We talk about the concept of debt by time by scale in real estate all the time, which is 100% fail-safe manner
Yeah.
in which to get wealthy. Buy properties, put debt on them, hold them for long enough, buy them in enough scale. So at 41, you're way ahead of your peers. And it's normal to be pretty focused in one area at that age. People get diversified, Clark, generally as they get a little bit older, right? And so for a 41-year-old, I would put you in the absolute normalcy bucket, if not ahead of a lot of your peers in terms of what you've achieved and what you've done. So don't beat yourself up. But you are definitely going to see the need for more diversification as you get a little bit older. And so I said I'd open the kimono here a little bit today and have a little bit of a look at what I do. And so I am heavily invested in real estate. Okay. I have a lot of debt and I have a lot of assets, and I don't care how they fluctuate in value. So when you've got the crash doomsayers on YouTube talking about this happening or that happening, I don't care because I'm long on my real estate. That's it. I just don't
Yeah.
care. A storm coming through, some damage here, some damage there. I don't care. Not that I don't care, right? I care about people. But by and large, I've learned that I am diversified around Tampa Bay. I'm diversified a little bit up and down the coasts as well. I'm diversified amongst the age of the homes that I have, the type of homes. I've block homes, I've frame homes, I've A-class neighborhoods, I've got C-class neighborhoods. So I am diversified around that range, right? And so there is diversification even within your real estate portfolio. I don't own, 5 houses on the same street, large trees directly on the ocean, right? And that's why I've never really super enjoyed, people naturally say, well, go into multifamily. If a tenant moves out, then you've got 30 units and a tenant moves out, well, then you still have 29 tenants paying you money. Well, guess what? Imagine one tenant starts a fire. Now you've got 30 tenants not paying you money. So people have always put large multifamily in front of me as it's some sort of diversified natural progression. I've always stayed with single homes. A single home will only ever take itself out. And that's the way I look at it. So there is diversification just within the buy and hold strategy, for sure, right? But I've always kept every single bit of income forever in cash that my rentals produce. So my rentals produce income, and that income goes into a business account. That business account is there to pay for, storm damage, new roofs, It accumulates from time to time, and it is used as a deposit for the next property. But that's a business in and of itself that I've never taken a dime out of, but that does accumulate wealth, and it's that side of my world as a wealth builder. So, but I am very, very happy that I have cash. Diversification strategy number 2, right? So I diversify within my real estate portfolio. I diversify within the type of homes that I buy, the quality of the homes I buy, where I buy them, right? And then I always maintain a pretty decent cash position so that I have the liquidity to get through anything at any given time. So there's diversification in cash. Then over the years, I am the world's worst stock picker. And I would imagine a lot of other people out there would agree with me. Yeah, we've all taken a ride on, we all have winners,
Yeah.
right? But I got a lot of losers as well, and a long time ago, I kind of, started to, follow things like Motley Fool, and I would buy their recommendations and things like that. And I've learned over the years that individual stocks are not for me. They don't really work well for me. And it's very funny to see my stock portfolio, because of the stocks that I've ever chosen, let's say there's 25 of those, there's like 5 of them are green and 15 of them are red, right? So they're the stocks that I've chosen over the years, based on hunches, based on, strategies, based on thematic concepts and whatnot, right? But then I have the vast majority of my stock portfolio is in an array of ETFs. And so the ETFs that I like, that I use all of the time, right? I'll just go through some of them here. So my ETFs, every single one of my ETFs are green, right? Every one of them are green, and they always have been green, right? So the ETFs I use is VOOG. That's a Vanguard Growth ETF. I also have quite a large position in VOOV, which is the S&P 500 Value ETF. Again, Vanguard. I keep a neutral position with VOO, which is just a Vanguard S&P 500. So that's a whole S&P. Then I have a Vanguard Mega Cap Growth ETF, MGK. And MGK has done very well for me. I take a position in the NASDAQ with my QQQ ETF. That's Invesco QQQ, right? I have a global position in the artificial intelligence space called AIQ ETF. I have the Morningstar Wide Moat ETF, which I love, MOAT. That's just an all-weather ETF. You could put a good chunk of your world in there. I have a Vanguard Information Technology ETF, VGT. I use VGT for some extra exposure to the technology world. Now, that is in one account. I'm going to just jump over to another account here, because this is an interesting. I also, for income, in my income world, I'm a hard money lender, and so I have a lot of my income diversified into hard money loans, and that adds a great deal of solace to my life. I also invest in some sort of saltier, high income REITs. AGNC is a very, very high dividend paying mortgage backed security REIT. I don't suggest that you put a huge amount of your world in there, but it is stable in terms of it, the fluctuation in price value, but equally mortgage-backed security REITs can lose value quickly. So you want to be careful of those. I have another growth ETF, VUG. I also invest a little bit in income with BGT, which is a BlackRock floating rate income strategy. And they're just to name a few, Clark. I've got a lot of other positions in other places, but by and large, I'm heavily exposed to the S&P growth, the S&P whole, the S&P value, and then VGT and VTI and the technology side of things. And I feel I'm pretty well diversified there. And I have had to learn to trust these things because I never did. And now I'm able to psychologically withstand fluctuations in there. So within the ETFs I've just outlined, that is my, they're my also wealth builders that I have. And then, as I say, hard money lending is what I use for my income. And I mean my entire income. I don't, my real estate portfolio throws off income, but I don't rely on that income for my income. I rely on hard money lending for my income. So the hard money lending almost serves as a bond component. It's just a higher paying bond component. So if you go to your financial advisor, a lot of financial advisors will tell you, you take, 10 or 15% of your capital, keep it in cash, 6 months to a year of walking around money. They'll tell you some good exposure to various parts of the stock market, growth, value, all market, and technology. And then they will tell you to get into a bond portfolio. Maybe 30, 40% of your assets should be in bonds. I don't do bonds, and they just don't pay enough. They're just not for me. So instead of bonds, I take 30, 40% of my net worth and I lend it out at 10, 11, 12, 13%. And it's way more reliable. It's way more meaningful. I have way more control over it. And so my diversification, Clark, is across real estate. It's across cash. It's across a well-diversified ETF portfolio. And it's across hard money lending for income. And of all of those, the only one I've ever lost substantial money in is when I chose individual stocks myself.
Yeah, you played Russian roulette. So just curious, before we hop off here on the ETF stuff, because I know very little about that. How long did it take you to kind of come to that realization? Like, obviously you spoke about that at length, and so you feel pretty confident about it. You're fairly passionate about it. How long did it take you when you first started buying ETFs to now where you feel like that you know what the hell you're talking about?
So I didn't, first of all, start buying ETFs. I bought when I started to play around the stock market originally. I bought individual stocks and I got burned, and I got burned again, and I kept on getting burned. And so I just went, just exactly like you just said, I got or it didn't perform, or I performed
Right.
for a little while. You'd catch a winner for a minute and then it would just stabilize and do nothing for another 5 years. And so I just never really fully appreciated that the stock market would do anything for me.
Yeah.
And for the most part, the stock market is not a great wealth builder when you're working with lower amounts of capital.
Yeah.
Like the ETFs I just outlined, VOO, VGT, VOOV, VOOG, those ETFs are great when you have substantial amount of capital just put there, watch them do their thing. They're reasonably trustworthy. The S&P will fluctuate, but by and large, it will go, to the right and up to the top corner of the right-hand side of your graph. And so over time, you're investing in the top 500 companies in the world. And what's great about it is what you might be feeling negative on a given day. So you might wake up on the wrong side of the bed in the morning and you say, okay, well, Florida got hit by storms, they got this by that.
Right.
And then you see the rest of the world doesn't think like you. It's,
Yeah.
I think interest rates are going to make the economy do this. And you find out that you're wrong. Or you think that interest rates are going to go up, they're going to go down. Housing is going to go up, housing is going to go down. But the bottom line is when you are diversified across ETFs, the world doesn't think like you. You're mostly wrong. Anyone out there listening, you're mostly wrong about what you think is going to happen in the future. Me too, right? So that's what I find, and I love the fact that I catch this growth that I've had nothing to do with. Real estate, I've got complete control over, but a lot of times I don't want that control. As I get older, I want less and less control of it.
Yeah.
And that's why, so the real estate is the wealth builder. The cash is the protector. The ETFs, as I said, is when you have, you're not going to make a huge amount of money if you got 10 grand in ETFs,
Right.
you know? But when you have more than that available to you, it's a good place to go and put capital. But the income, all my income is coming from the hard money lending side of my life. Your question was, how did I learn to do it? I learned the hard way. And one of my biggest regrets is I didn't learn sooner that ETFs are generally trustworthy. I would say the most important psychological lesson I had to learn was that what I feel about the future. Oh, the market is overpriced. I don't have a clue about the market. I think, the currencies are doing this. I don't have a clue about the currencies. The more informed you think you are, the more likely you are to not trust the market in general, right? You're just not going to trust it because you think your information in your brain supersedes, oh, I think the market's going to go up. I think it's going to go down. I think this is going to happen. I think that's going to happen. So I had to learn that I'm wrong. And I had to accept that I'm wrong. And then I clearly understood that most of my stock picking is also wrong because there's just so much involved in it. And I had to learn just to let go and trust the S&P with a substantial amount of capital, trust it. And then you see a little bit of green showing up and more green. And the more green you've got, the more you don't mind it fluctuating over time. Right. And so I hope that answers your question. I learned the hard way that I'm mostly wrong. And I learned to trust ETF strategy as something to put capital that I see. The reason why, Clark, is that I don't want all my capital in real estate all the time. So that's really where it came from. It's like, I love real estate. And I'm in rooms with people who have billions of dollars and tens of millions of dollars in real estate. I don't want that. I want to go away for the summer with my kids. I want to have, income to do that all year long. So my approach is just different.
Yeah, the stock picking to me is very foreign. I'd rather just have a nice free stiff drink served to me while I pick red or black, at the casino. At least I get a nice drink there and get to hang out with my friends versus stock picking. So it doesn't make sense to me. I will say that the whole life policy is very interesting as the infinite banking concept, which you can still compound it even when you borrow it against it. I borrowed maybe $100,000 at like 4.4% last year when rates were at double, which is a huge deal, so that was like a cheat code for me, and I'm glad I did it. And I'll just have to pay it back, and then I can rinse and repeat while it's still compounding on itself. Couple other things that we didn't mention before we get out of here is syndications. I know that you're invested in some syndications. Me and you are invested in some syndications together as well too. And for real estate, for like apartment complexes and large projects like that, where there may be $15-20 million as a limited partner, where you don't have any say in, what color they paint the door, what tenant they pick, and you're just a limited partner where you're just bringing in the capital. Those are the things that I've seen. Another thing too, we talked about offline is, the last 2 years, it's been very difficult to buy real estate at discounts. Interest rates are high, and we've kind of diversified into just looking at our own rental portfolio and just adding units on it, right? We've learned to build mainly because it didn't make sense for us to buy a single family house, turn around, fix it up, get a DSCR loan, which is a loan where they look at the rent versus the amount of your mortgage payment is. It wasn't high enough, right? The rents weren't high enough, and the interest rates were so high that it pushed your monthly payment so high that it didn't make sense. So we diversified, said, let's build another unit. We already paid for the dirt. We already own the backyard. I don't have to rebuy the backyard. So then we can build something. So it's forced us into a new skill set, which is probably looking back. These 8% interest rate days, we'll look back and probably say it was a good thing because it forced us to diversify a little bit into a whole new skill set, to where now we can start building just new properties as a whole. And we don't have to keep fixing up 1920s, houses with old plumbing. So those are just a few other ideas of the diversification. But I think, David, that's good that you talked about ETFs. I don't know barely anything about it, as I stated previously, but hopefully our listener today got a little bit of an insight, is that, we do look outside our little comfort bubble of real estate, and we look at kind of other things that are out there to make sure that we're not just sitting on a one-legged stool. But at the same time, it's a gentle balance between making sure that you're diversified versus making sure that you're not just chasing shiny red balls, and you're not, collecting Rolexes today and buying, classic cars tomorrow for investment and then putting it in Bitcoin. Like, you become a jack of all trades, master of none if you're not if you're not careful very, very quickly.
That's right.
So I've kind of just stayed in my lane. Maybe I'll kind of change a little bit as I, evolve. But for now, I'm probably just going to stick with mainly lending, because I like lending and I feel it's very secure. Real estate, continue to keep paying my money into my life insurance bucket every month, and stay away from crypto. So I'll leave it at that.
Stay away. No, I just want to reiterate that. Stay away from crypto. Yeah. Look, the bottom line is becoming wealthy is habitual, Clark, right? And so always be dollar cost averaging into everything.
Yeah.
If you say, well, I'm not buying houses, you're probably going to get that side of it wrong. Say you're not going to buy, ETFs, you're going to miss out on a lot of growth. So just all the time, focus on that one skill that makes you money. To your point about, adding ADUs, building new construction, focusing on a fix and flip, let's say, or in our case, we lend, right? And so get your core competency and stay with that boring thing that you're doing. Don't get shiny red object syndrome. Like just always stay making money at the thing that you do. But becoming wealthy is habitual. So always be buying real estate. Always be buying some ETFs. Always be saving cash. Always be selecting a syndication here and there. And the syndications that as we're getting specific, we specifically syndicate into, storage. We like self-storage. It's a high income and we kind of like it there. And we get a lot of bonus appreciation from it. And so, I think the most important thing that we could say is stay at your core competency, make your money there. And then with the money that you get, habitually do some other things. Now, there is an evolution in your thinking as well, because as people get older, they get to, let's say, my age and whatnot, income becomes way more important than growth.
Yeah.
And that's where hard money lending for us is just a natural, it's just a natural evolution for me, particularly because I don't want to do that flip anymore. I don't want to go and buy that foreclosure home. I don't want to kick the junkies out anymore. I just don't even drive there anymore, if I'm honest. So for me, I let the young guys go out and do that. And they could go out and make the big money. I'm going to give them the capital and the liquidity that they need to do their deals. And I'm going to be sitting in Spain with my kids collecting interest payments. So with that, Clark,
let's leave it. I love that.
Let's say sayonara.
Let's go sit in Spain. We did, and I'm sure we'll be doing it very, very soon. Thanks again to everyone that listens. If you could hit the subscribe button, we love any feedback that you could provide to us on any of our social medias at Burn Your Boats Wealth. And David, we're safe. The hurricane passes by. We are going to persevere, and we will build back much better. And with that, David, we will see you guys next time. Thanks so much.
No more hurricane talk. See you later. Yeah. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Look, we truly appreciate your support and hope you found the conversation insightful and engaging and useful. If you enjoyed the show, because there's a lot of shows out there, would you please take a moment to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform? Your feedback helps us grow and reach more listeners. And if we reach more listeners, we will have bigger and more interesting guests. So don't miss the show. Please go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. We hope you enjoyed today's show. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Burn Your Boats podcast with Clark Lunt and David Shaw. We would love to hear from you. Please reach out at burnyourboatswealth.com with comments, questions, and if you have a topic you would like Clark and David to discuss on an upcoming episode. We would very much appreciate it if you took the time to rate and review Burn Your Boats podcast on your favorite podcast listening app, and make sure to follow and share on social media. Content in Burn Your Boats podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not legal or financial advice. please review our legal disclaimer at burnyourboatswealth.com. Thank you for listening.